Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to try to figure out how to take these massive global ideas like the UN's Sustainable Development Goals
Oh yeah.
and actually make them work in real communities.
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it?
It is.
Especially when we're talking about health and well-being, and you found this really interesting paper
It did.
about a program in Australia
Yeah.
called Best Start.
Yeah. Best Start really stood out to me too, and it seems like they've kind of figured it out, at least in their own little corner of the world. It's
Yeah.
all about bringing together all these different groups, universities and schools,
Mm.
community sports organizations,
All working together.
to try to improve the health and well-being of people in Gippsland.
And what's really interesting is that Gippsland isn't, a perfect little, wealthy community. They
Right.
face a lot of challenges there.
Yeah, they've got some socioeconomic issues going on.
Uh-huh.
Educational aspirations maybe haven't been the highest.
Yeah, they weren't exactly working with a blank slate. No.
They had real-world problems to deal with.
And they were really trying to, make a difference in this community that needed a lot of support.
Right.
And they did it by focusing on the power of partnerships.
Yeah, partnerships are key.
But here's the thing that really surprised me. Less than 25% of these multi-stakeholder partnerships actually hit their goals.
Wow. That's a bit disheartening, isn't it?
It is. It's a bit of a reality check.
Yeah.
It makes you realize that Best Start is really something special because they seem to have beaten those odds.
Yeah, they're definitely bucking the trend.
Yeah, but before we get too deep into their approach, I think we need to take a step back and look at the SDGs,
Okay.
specifically goals 3 and 4.
Right. So we're talking about Goal 3, ensuring healthy lives and promoting well-being for all ages.
Yeah, and goal 4 is all about ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and, those lifelong learning opportunities for all.
Yeah.
And Australia, even though it's a developed nation, still has a lot of work to do in those areas. Oh, absolutely, especially when it comes to tackling those non-communicable diseases.
Yeah, like heart disease and obesity.
You're right.
Huge problem.
Its Best Start is like this little microcosm of how you can take those global goals and turn them into something real and tangible at a local level.
Yeah, they're all about physical education.
Yeah.
Physical activity, healthy habits, and kids, building that foundation for a healthy life.
Right. They're setting them up for success from the get-go.
And they didn't just come in with a predetermined plan.
No.
Yeah.
No, they were much more collaborative than that.
This is where it gets really interesting. They started by working with these pre-service teachers.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, giving them real-world, hand-on experience teaching health and physical education.
So these are teachers in training,
Exactly.
getting out there in the field.
Yeah, and they place them in local primary schools.
And it wasn't just a one-way street, right?
Right.
The pre-service teachers got experience.
Uh-huh.
The kids got quality physical activity.
And the classroom teachers even got some professional development out of it.
It's a win-win-win.
It is, and that's such a crucial point
Absolutely.
because it shows that they were thinking about sustainability from the very beginning.
Right. They didn't want to just create a temporary fix.
No, they were building capacity within the community itself.
They were empowering the community to take ownership.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they brought in these pre-service teachers, gave them real-world experience, and in the process helped upskill the existing teachers as well.
It's a brilliant strategy.
But I'm curious about how they ensured that this wasn't just a short-term boost. How did they make those benefits stick?
That's a great question. And it leads us to one of the key insights from the paper.
Okay.
They focused on building relationships between the schools and community sports organizations.
So it's not just about what happens within the school walls. It's about connecting kids to opportunities for physical activity outside of school.
Exactly. They were thinking holistically about the whole ecosystem of health and well-being in the community.
Not just isolated interventions, but real sustainable change.
Right, and that's one of the things that makes Best Start so unique.
This is all fascinating. But reading the paper, it's clear that Best Start didn't just stumble onto success,
No, of course not.
They faced some challenges along the way.
Oh, yeah. Every worthwhile endeavor does.
And the paper really digs into this concept of wicked problems.
Oh, yeah. Wicked problems.
These messy, complicated issues that are tough to even define, let alone solve.
They can be real head scratchers.
Okay, so wicked problems. Can you give me a concrete example of what one might look like in the Best Start program?
Okay, well, imagine those pre-service teachers, full of enthusiasm and fresh ideas from their training.
Right, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed?
Exactly. And they come into a school with a very different culture and set of priorities.
Okay, I can see where this is going.
Maybe the school is struggling with limited resources or a packed
Or
curriculum.
maybe even some resistance from the staff.
All right, so you've got these eager pre-service teachers wanting to implement the latest physical activity guidelines,
Mm-hmm.
and they hit this wall of reality.
Yeah, time constraints, budgetary limitations, maybe even some skepticism from the more seasoned teachers.
That's a recipe for frustration and potentially even conflict.
Yeah, and that's where the wicked part comes in.
Right. These aren't problems with easy
We
solutions.
can't just throw money at them or come in with a top-down mandate.
It requires a more nuanced collaborative approach.
And that's where those 9 building blocks for successful partnerships come in.
They're like a toolkit for navigating those tricky situations.
Okay, let's dive into those building blocks,
Sounds good.
because they seem to be the key to unlocking the best start story and understanding how they manage to overcome those wicked problems
I think you're right.
to create real lasting change.
And the first building block is leadership.
Okay, leadership.
The paper emphasizes that successful partnerships need someone to drive the process.
To keep the energy up, make sure everyone's on the same page.
Exactly, someone to champion the cause, navigate those challenges.
Keep everyone motivated and focused.
Right, someone to really steer the ship.
So it's not just about having a great idea, it's about having someone who can make it happen.
Precisely.
So who were those leaders in Best Start?
It seems like it was a beautiful blend of top-down and bottom-up leadership.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
You had those passionate faculty members at Monash University.
The ones who were deeply committed to giving their pre-service teachers meaningful practical experience.
Exactly.
So these weren't just professors stuck in their ivory towers.
No, they were out there in the trenches making it happen.
And then on the school side, you had principals and teachers who were open to this collaboration,
Right, they saw the value in it not just for their students,
but for their own professional development as
that
well.
they were all in.
It sounds like they created this shared sense of ownership where everyone felt invested in the program's success.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that shared purpose is crucial for overcoming those inevitable challenges.
But leadership is just the first piece of the puzzle.
Right.
The second building block focuses on the partners themselves.
And this is where it gets really interesting because it's not just about finding partners who are easy to work with.
Or who already have existing relationships.
Right. It's about finding partners who fill those gaps.
Who bring something unique to the table.
Exactly. You need a diverse range of stakeholders to create a truly holistic program.
So they needed partners with expertise in pedagogy, curriculum development, community engagement, sports coaching.
That's a lot to juggle.
It is. And they seem to have understood that from the outset.
They were very strategic in their partner selection.
So tell me, who are some of those key partners in Best Start?
Well, obviously, they tapped into the expertise within the university itself.
Using the knowledge of the faculty and the enthusiasm of those pre-service teachers,
Right. But they didn't stop there.
they reached out at the schools,
Uh-huh.
found those principals and teachers who were open to collaborate,
And then they brought in those community sports organizations.
recognizing the important role they play in providing ongoing opportunities for physical activity.
Exactly. They were thinking long term.
So they weren't trying to reinvent the wheel.
No, they were looking to the community itself, to those who were already working in these spaces.
And saying, how can we work together to create something even better?
They tapped into that wealth of knowledge and experience that already existed in Gippsland.
Now, we talked earlier about those wicked problems.
Right, those messy, complex issues.
Did they face any specific wicked problems when it came to choosing their partners?
That's an interesting question. The paper doesn't really go into detail about any specific challenges they faced in that area,
Okay.
but you can imagine bringing together such a diverse group of stakeholders
Right.
must have presented some hurdles.
Yeah, you've got academics with their research focus,
Right.
teachers concerned with classroom management and curriculum delivery, and then you've got community sports organizations thinking about program logistics and community engagement.
It's like trying to herd cats.
It is.
Yeah.
Everyone comes to the table with their own priorities,
Their own language.
their own way of doing things.
Exactly.
So how do they manage to get everyone on the same page?
That's where that first building block leadership comes back into play.
So it was those strong leaders who helped to bridge those divides.
It seems like they had individuals who were really skilled at facilitating those conversations
At finding that common ground.
and creating a shared sense of purpose.
So it wasn't just about finding the right partners. It was about creating the right environment for those partners to thrive.
Exactly. And that brings us to the third building block, goal setting,
Goal setting.
which might seem pretty straightforward at first glance.
You set a goal and you go for it,
Right, but it's a little more nuanced than that.
especially when you're dealing with a complex partnership like this.
Exactly. You need a shared vision, clear
Goals
goals.
that are ambitious but also specific and measurable.
Right? You need to be able to track your progress.
So it's not just about having this vague idea of what you want to achieve.
No, you need to get everyone on the same page.
Articulate those goals in a way that everyone understands.
And that allows you to actually measure your success.
So what were the shared goals in Best Start?
Well, their overarching goal was beautifully articulated in the program's name.
Best Start, a community collaborative approach to lifelong health and wellness.
Exactly. They wanted to give children in Gippsland the best possible start in life.
By promoting healthy habits and fostering a love of physical activity.
It's a powerful and aspirational goal.
It is, but I imagine they also needed some more concrete, measurable objectives.
You're absolutely right. They broke down that overarching goal into more specific objectives.
Okay, like what?
Things like increasing the amount of time children spent engaged in moderate to vigorous physical activity,
Okay.
improving children's fundamental movement skills,
And physical literacy.
and also enhancing teachers' confidence and competence in delivering high-quality physical education.
So it wasn't just about the kids, it was about empowering the teachers as well.
Exactly. They were thinking about the whole system.
Those are much more tangible and measurable objectives.
Right. It makes it easier to actually track their progress
And by setting those clear objectives, they're able to stay focused on their priorities.
and measure their success along the way.
But setting goals is just one part of the equation.
Right.
The next building block tackles a challenge that many partnerships struggle with funding.
Yes, the eternal struggle.
And I know from the paper that Best Start managed to operate without any external funding.
I know. Isn't that incredible?
It is, but I'm sure it wasn't easy.
No, I'm sure there were challenges.
What insights does the paper offer about navigating that challenge?
Well, first of all, it's important to acknowledge that what they did was remarkable.
It is?
They managed to launch and run this whole program without any external funding.
No grants, no sponsorships, nothing.
Nothing. They were completely self-sufficient.
That's amazing. How did they pull that off?
It speaks to the incredible dedication of everyone involved.
Yeah.
They creatively leveraged the existing resources within the community.
So the university provided the pre-service teachers and their expertise. The schools offered their facilities and students.
And the community sports organizations contributed their coaching and programming experience.
They really made the most of what they had.
And it worked beautifully.
That's a testament to the power of collaboration and community spirit.
Absolutely.
It shows that with a shared passion and a bit of ingenuity, you can achieve incredible things.
You don't always need a huge budget to make a difference.
But I'm curious, did operating on a shoestring budget present any limitations?
That's a great question. The paper doesn't go into detail about any funding-related challenges they might have encountered,
Right.
but it's safe to assume that operating without a dedicated budget presented some constraints.
Yeah, I imagine it might have limited their ability to expand the program
Or purchase new equipment.
or offer stipends to the participating teachers.
Right, but on the other hand, maybe those limitations force them to be even more creative.
And resourceful.
Exactly. Sometimes constraints can lead to unexpected innovation.
It's like their old saying, necessity is the mother of invention.
Exactly. And in the case of Best Start, their shoestring budget seems to have only strengthened their commitment to collaboration and community engagement.
But let's be realistic.
Okay.
Not every partnership can pull off what Best Start did.
Right.
So for those who aren't able to rely solely on in-kind contributions, the paper emphasizes that securing sustainable funding requires a more multifaceted approach.
It's not just about chasing grants or relying on one-off donations.
It's about creating a diverse funding portfolio.
That combines different sources of income.
So thinking outside the box,
Exactly.
exploring creative funding models.
Right.
What are some examples of those alternative funding streams?
Well, they highlight things like in-kind contributions, which we've already touched on,
Right.
but they also suggest exploring opportunities for social enterprise.
So finding ways for the partnership to actually generate its own revenue
Exactly.
through activities that are related to its mission.
Right. So that could be anything from selling healthy snacks at school events
To offering paid workshops.
or training programs to the community
The key is to find creative ways to generate income
that align with the partnership's values.
and contribute to its long-term sustainability.
Precisely.
This is all great advice.
I hope so.
It's inspiring to see how Best Start made it work with limited resources.
Yeah, they were very resourceful.
And it's helpful to know that there are other creative funding models out there.
Absolutely.
But let's move on to the next building block, which, if I'm reading our notes correctly, is all about management.
You're on the right track.
Okay, management.
It might not sound as exciting as some of the other topics,
No, it doesn't.
but it's absolutely crucial for keeping any partnership running smoothly.
So why is management so important for partnerships specifically?
Well, partnerships involve multiple stakeholders
Right.
with different perspectives,
Different priorities?
different ways of doing things,
Uh-huh.
and without effective management, those differences can lead to miscommunication
Conflict.
and ultimately the breakdown of the partnership.
It's like trying to build a house without a blueprint.
Or a project manager.
You might have all the right
The
materials,
best intentions.
but without a plan and a system for coordinating everything, it's going to be chaos.
That's a great analogy. And the paper suggests that successful partnerships often invest in a dedicated independent secretariat
Okay, a
to
secretary.
handle those day-to-day operations.
So having that central point of contact
Right.
streamlines communication,
Keeps everyone on the same page.
coordinates activities.
Exactly. It's all about creating a smooth and efficient workflow.
They also emphasize the need for clear communication channels,
Right.
regular meetings.
And transparent decision-making processes.
That sounds like a recipe for avoiding misunderstandings
Fostering trust.
and creating a more harmonious and productive working environment.
Precisely. Now, in the case of Best Start, it's unclear from the paper whether they have a formal secretariat
Okay.
or how they structured their management processes.
But given their success, it seems likely they had some kind of system in place
To ensure effective coordination?
and communication among their partners,
Right. They must have had some kind of structure.
even if it wasn't formal,
It seems like they had a shared understanding of roles and responsibilities.
and a commitment to working together effectively.
They were a well-oiled machine.
So another takeaway here is that effective management doesn't always require this rigid bureaucratic structure
No, it's about finding the right balance,
between formality and flexibility.
depending on the partnership's needs and context.
Absolutely. And speaking of finding the right balance, the next building block tackles something that's often overlooked but incredibly important:
Oh, what's that?
monitoring, reporting, evaluation, and learning.
Ah, yes, MRL.
MRL.
Got it.
Okay, so we've got our leadership in place.
Uh-huh.
Partners assembled goals, defined funding secured.
And management structures established.
What's the role of MREL in all of this?
MRL is all about making sure the partnership is on track
That it's making progress towards its goals.
and that it's learning from its experiences along the way.
So it's like a feedback loop
Exactly.
that helps the partnership adapt, improve, and ultimately maximize its impact.
Precisely.
So it's not just about checking boxes or fulfilling reporting requirements.
No, it's about using data and insights to guide decision-making.
And drive continuous improvement.
Right. It's about using information to make the partnership better.
And the paper emphasizes that MREL shouldn't be an afterthought.
It should be baked into the partnership's DNA from the very beginning.
So not just collecting data at the end of the project,
Yeah.
but continuously monitoring progress,
Analyzing results.
using those insights to make adjustments along the way.
Exactly. It's a continuous process of improvement.
And they highlight 3 key principles of effective MREL:
Okay, let's hear them.
transparency,
Uh-huh.
robust indicators, and a culture of learning.
Those are some good ones.
Break those down for me. What do they mean by transparency, robust indicators, and a culture of learning?
Okay, so transparency means everyone involved has access to the data
Right.
and understands how it's being collected and used.
No secrets.
Exactly. Then you've got robust indicators, which
Which
are
are-
tracking metrics that are relevant to your goals.
And that can be reliably measured.
Right. You need good data to make good decisions.
And then a culture of learning,
That means you're not afraid to acknowledge mistakes
to embrace feedback.
and to make adjustments based on what you're learning
So it's about being open to change.
and constantly striving to improve.
That sounds like a healthy and productive way to approach any collaborative effort, not just partnerships.
I agree. It's a good philosophy for life in general.
But let's bring us back to Best Start.
Okay.
Did the paper provide any specific examples of how they incorporated MREL into their work?
Unfortunately, the paper doesn't go into detail about their MREL processes. However, given their focus on continuous improvement,
And their commitment to evidence-based practice.
it's safe to assume they had some kind of system in place.
It makes sense. I mean, they were clearly paying attention to what was working and what wasn't.
Right, and they were making adjustments along the way.
So another takeaway here is that effective MREL doesn't have to be this super formal structured system
No, it's more about having that mindset.
of constantly evaluating and improving.
Exactly. And that adaptability is crucial for navigating those wicked problems we talked about earlier.
Right, because the problems themselves are constantly evolving.
So the solutions need to evolve as well.
It's like trying to hit a moving target,
You need to be constantly adjusting your aim,
taking into account new information.
refining your approach.
Exactly. And MREL provides that feedback loop.
That allows partnerships to stay agile and continuously improve their effectiveness.
This has been an incredibly insightful exploration of those first 6 building blocks for successful partnerships.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We've talked about leadership,
Partners,
goal setting,
maintenance,
management.
and MREL.
It's amazing to see how they all fit together,
Right.
how each one builds on the previous one.
To create that strong foundation for collaboration.
It's like building a house brick by brick,
Each element is essential.
and they all work together to create a structure that's strong and stable.
A structure that can withstand those inevitable storms.
I love that analogy. But I'm eager to hear about the remaining 3 building blocks.
Oh, yeah, we still got some more to explore.
What other insights can we glean from Best Start and this framework?
Well, buckle up because the next building block takes us into a more conceptual realm.
Ooh, I love conceptual realms.
It's all about something called meta-governance.
Meta-governance.
It's a mouthful.
That sounds even more abstract than the previous ones.
It is a bit abstract.
What exactly are we talking about here?
Think of meta-governance as the rules of the game for partnerships.
Okay.
It's the framework that sets the ground rules, establishes standards.
Ensures a level playing field for all the partners.
Exactly.
So it's about creating a fair and transparent system.
That fosters trust and accountability.
But why is that necessary?
Don't partnerships already have their own internal governance structures? They do.
Right.
But meta-governance operates at a higher level.
Ah.
It's about creating a set of shared principles and guidelines.
That apply to all partnerships within a particular sector or context.
Exactly.
So it's like having a constitution for partnerships.
A set of foundational principles that guide their formation.
Their operation and interaction with each other.
Precisely.
And the paper highlights 3 key elements of effective meta-governance.
Okay.
Setting minimum criteria for partnerships.
Uh-huh.
Establishing a vetting process.
Okay.
And exploring linkages between different partnerships.
Those are some important elements.
Okay, break those down for me. What do they mean by setting minimum criteria, establishing a vetting process, and exploring linkages?
Okay, so setting minimum criteria ensures that all partnerships meet certain quality standards.
Like what?
Things like having a clear mission.
A governance structure?
And a commitment to ethical practices.
Right, so it's about establishing that baseline level of quality and accountability.
Exactly.
What about the vetting process?
A vetting process helps ensure that partners are aligned.
In terms of their values and capacity to contribute.
Right. It's about making sure that the partners are a good fit for each other.
That they share a common vision.
And that they have the resources and expertise to make a meaningful contribution.
Exactly. And the final element, exploring linkages between different partnerships.
That encourages collaboration,
knowledge sharing,
prevents duplication of effort,
and maximizes impact.
Exactly. It's about creating a network of partnerships
That can learn from each other.
and support each other.
But I'm curious, how does this concept of meta-governance apply to Best Start?
Did they operate within a broader framework of this kind?
That's a great question, and unfortunately, the paper doesn't provide any specific examples of meta-governance in the context of Best Start.
However, it's an important concept to consider for anyone involved in building partnerships.
So even though it might not have been explicitly articulated in the Best Start case, it's something that we should be thinking about as we consider the broader implications of their work.
Absolutely.
And how to replicate their success.
It's a valuable lens to apply.
And that takes us to the 8th building block,
Right.
which focuses on something we've already touched on,
What's that?
the problem structure.
Oh, yeah. Remember those wicked problems we talked about?
Those messy, complex challenges that can make partnerships feel like they're treading water.
Exactly. And this building block emphasizes that not all problems are created equal,
Some problems are more straightforward,
with clear causes and solutions.
while others are more complex, interconnected, and resistant to change,
It's important to know what you're dealing with
and understanding the nature of the problem you're tackling,
is crucial for choosing the right approach.
and setting realistic expectations.
Absolutely. The paper highlights 3 key strategies for navigating problem structure.
Okay, I'm ready.
First, acknowledging differences in problem complexity.
Yeah,
Second, adapting expectations accordingly.
got it.
And third, designing the partnership to align with the specific challenges at hand.
Okay, unpack those for me. What do they mean by acknowledging differences in problem complexity, adapting expectations, and designing the partnership to align with the challenges?
Okay, so acknowledging differences in problem complexity means recognizing that some problems will take more time,
More resources.
more effort to address than others.
So one-size-fits-all approach isn't going to cut it.
Exactly. And then adapting expectations accordingly means setting realistic goals,
And timelines.
avoiding the trap of overpromising.
And under-delivering.
Right, because unrealistic expectations can lead to all sorts of problems.
Frustration. Even the collapse of the partnership.
Exactly.
And finally, designing the partnership to align with the specific challenges at hand.
That means choosing partners with the right expertise.
Developing strategies tailored to the problem's complexity.
And being flexible enough to adapt as needed.
So it's about being strategic and intentional.
In how you structure the partnership.
Making sure it has the capacity and the flexibility to tackle the problem you're trying to solve.
Right. It's about setting the partnership up for success.
Now, in the case of Best Start, the paper doesn't explicitly analyze the problem structure they were addressing.
Right.
But given their focus on addressing health and well-being disparities in a socioeconomically disadvantaged region, it's safe to assume they were dealing with a pretty complex and multifaceted problem.
That's a reasonable inference.
And their success suggests that they were able to navigate that complexity.
By building a strong partnership.
Setting clear goals.
Implementing evidence-based strategies.
But there's one more building block to consider.
Okay, hit me with it.
And it's perhaps the most overlooked.
Uh-oh, this sounds important.
But also the most influential.
Okay, I'm really intrigued now.
Yeah.
What is it?
It's all about the broader political and social context.
Ah, yes, the real world.
How does that political and social landscape influence partnership success?
Well, the paper emphasizes that partnerships don't operate in a vacuum.
Right. They're influenced by all sorts of external factors.
Government policies,
social norms,
cultural values.
economic conditions.
It's a complex web of influences.
And those factors can either support or hinder the partnership's efforts.
Depending on how they align with the partnership's mission and goals.
So you need to be aware of those external forces.
And be prepared to navigate them.
And the paper highlights 3 key strategies for doing just that.
Okay, I'm listening.
First, identifying potential roadblocks.
Okay.
Second, engaging in capacity building.
Got it.
And third, choosing the most favorable context.
Those are some good strategies.
Okay, let's break those down one by one.
Sure.
What do you mean by identifying potential roadblocks?
It means being aware of any existing policies, regulations, or cultural norms.
That might get in the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You need to understand the landscape you're working in.
And be prepared to navigate those obstacles.
Right.
So, for example, if you're working to promote healthy eating habits in a community where fast food is readily available and heavily marketed,
Right.
you need to be aware of that challenge.
And develop strategies to address it.
You need to understand the context.
Absolutely.
What about capacity building?
How does that play into this?
Capacity building refers to strengthening the skills, knowledge, and resources of the partners.
In the community they serve.
It's about empowering individuals and organizations.
To take ownership of the change process.
And sustain it over the long term.
It's about building lasting capacity for change.
So not just coming in with a prepackaged solution,
No.
but working with the community to develop their own capacity.
To address the problem.
And create lasting change.
It's a much more sustainable approach.
And finally, what do they mean by choosing the most favorable context?
That might mean partnering with communities that have already demonstrated a commitment to the cause.
Where there's strong political will.
And where the community is open to change.
It sounds like choosing the right context can make a huge difference in the partnership's ability to succeed.
It can definitely make things easier.
Now, in the case of Best Start, the paper doesn't explicitly analyze the political and social context of the Gippsland region,
Right.
but given their focus.
So we've been talking about taking these global goals like the UN Sustainable Development Goals and making them work on the ground, using Best Start as our kind of guiding light.
It's been really fascinating to see how they took those big ideas and actually made them happen in the Gippsland region.
Sure.
But you mentioned this connection to a broader movement towards a more sustainable and equitable world.
Right. Best Start isn't just about, getting kids more active. It's about a much more fundamental shift in how we think about community well-being. They've really tapped into something universal.
Okay, I'm hooked. Break it down for me.
Yeah.
How does this little program in Australia connect to these huge aspirations for sustainability and equity.
Well, think about it like this. The SDGs are basically a roadmap for a better future for everyone, right?
Yeah.
But they're just massive in scope.
Yeah, we're talking about ending poverty,
Tackling climate change.
ensuring quality education for all.
It can feel pretty overwhelming.
It can. Yeah, it's hard to know where to even begin.
Exactly. And that's where programs like Best Start come in. They show us that change doesn't have to start at the top.
Right.
With these big pronouncements and
You
policies.
can start right in our own communities.
Exactly.
With a group of people who are passionate about making a difference.
Precisely. Best Start demonstrates that local action, when it's grounded in those 9 building blocks,
Right.
can actually ripple outwards.
And contribute to global progress.
It's like a snowball effect.
I love that.
Right.
So it's about connecting those dots between the local and the global.
Exactly.
Showing that even small-scale initiatives can have a big impact.
It's about thinking globally and acting locally.
And that brings us to one of the most crucial aspects of Best Start. Their focus on sustainability.
Right. They weren't just looking for a Band-Aid solution.
They were aiming for lasting change.
And that's where those partnerships become so important. It's about building capacity within the community itself.
Empowering people to take ownership of their own well-being.
You got it. Best Start understood that true sustainability has to come from within.
It has to be homegrown.
Exactly. You need to foster that sense of shared responsibility.
And empower individuals to take the reins.
It's not about experts coming in and saying, this is how you do it.
It's just about working alongside the community.
To co-create solutions that really meet their needs.
Solutions that are tailored to their specific context.
Precisely. And that aligns perfectly with the principles of equity and inclusion that are at the heart of the SDGs.
Right. It's about recognizing that everyone has a role to play.
In creating a better future.
And that the best solutions often come from the community itself.
From the people who are most affected by the problem.
It's about tapping into that collective wisdom and experience.
Absolutely.
This is so inspiring. It gives me hope that we can actually make progress on these huge global challenges.
Yeah.
Not by waiting for someone else to take action.
But by doing it ourselves.
Right here, right now.
You got it. We have the power to make a difference.
So what's the next step? Where do we go from here?
How do we translate this inspiration into action?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. And while there's no one-size-fits-all answer,
Right.
I think Best Start offers some valuable clues.
Oh, yeah, I'm all ears.
Remember those 9 building blocks we discussed earlier?
The blueprint for success.
Exactly. They offer a roadmap for creating impactful partnerships.
Mobilizing resources.
And tackling those complex challenges that can feel so daunting.
So let's recap those building blocks one more time.
Right.
We've got leadership,
Partners,
goal setting,
management,
meta-governance,
problem structure.
and political and social context.
That's quite a list.
It is, but Best Start shows us that it's not just a theoretical framework.
It's something that can be put into practice.
To create real, tangible change in the world.
Exactly.
So if you're feeling inspired,
Uh-huh.
but you're not sure where to start,
Take another look at those building blocks.
think about how they might apply to a problem or a cause that you're passionate about.
Exactly.
Maybe you're passionate about improving access to healthy food in your neighborhood.
Or advocating for more green space.
Or supporting educational opportunities for underserved communities.
Whatever it is that gets you fired up.
Use those building blocks as a guide.
And remember, you don't have to start from scratch.
Right. There are tons of organizations and initiatives out there that are already doing amazing work.
Reach out, connect, learn from their experiences.
That's such a great point.
Mm-hmm.
This has been an incredibly empowering conversation.
I'm glad to hear that.
I'm feeling inspired, energized, and ready to roll up my sleeves and make a difference.
That's the spirit.
And as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier.
Oh, what's that?
The fact that Best Start operated without any external funding.
Ah, yes. That's a point worth revisiting.
It's remarkable that they were able to achieve so much with such limited resources.
It really is. It challenges our assumptions about what's possible.
Right. It shows that you don't need a huge budget.
To make a real impact.
But it also raises some interesting questions.
About the role of funding in creating sustainable change.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What kind of questions are we talking about?
Well, on the one hand, Best Start shows us that you can achieve amazing things even with limited resources.
Right.
They were incredibly resourceful.
They leveraged existing assets, tapped into the community's expertise.
And made it work.
So it challenges that idea that you need tons of money to make a difference.
Exactly. But on the other hand,
Yeah.
we have to acknowledge that their lack of funding probably created some limitations as well.
Right. They probably had to make some tough choices.
Maybe they had to scale back their ambitions.
Or turn down opportunities to expand the program.
It's possible that with more resources, they could have reached even more people,
Provided more training.
developed even more innovative programs.
So while their story is incredibly inspiring.
It also raises a question that I think is worth pondering.
What's that?
How can we make sure that initiatives like Best Start have access to the resources they need to truly thrive and reach their full potential?
That's a big question.
It is. It touches on some complex issues around funding equity,
Resource allocation.
the relationship between nonprofits, government agencies, and philanthropic organizations.
It's a tangled web.
It is. And while we don't have time to untangle it all today,
Right.
I think it's a conversation worth having.
Maybe we can revisit it in a future deep dive.
I'd be happy to.
It's a good reminder that even the most successful initiatives face challenges.
And that there's always more work to be done.
To create a more equitable and supportive environment for change makers.
Absolutely. And it brings us back to that core message of Best Start.
The power of partnerships.
Right? Not just partnerships between organizations,
The partnerships between people.
between communities.
Between sectors.
It's about recognizing that we're all connected
That we all have something to contribute.
and that by working together, we can achieve so much more than we ever could alone.
Beautifully said. Now, before we move on to our final part,
Okay.
I want to shift our focus to something that's been kind of lurking in the background of this entire conversation.
Oh, what's that?
The human element.
Ah, yes, the heart and soul of any partnership.
We've talked a lot about
The
structures,
system.
strategies.
But at the end of the day, it's the people who make it all happen.
It's about those relationships,
The connections
the shared passion and commitment.
that bring these partnerships to life.
Okay, so we've covered a ton in this deep dive. From the specifics of those 9 building blocks to the inspiring story of Best Start.
Yeah, and we even touched on some pretty big questions, about sustainability and equity.
And the role of funding in creating lasting change, right?
Yeah.
But at the end, the last part, you mentioned something really intriguing about the human element of these partnerships.
Yeah, it's time we move, beyond those structures and strategies.
Right.
And really focus on what makes these collaborations tick, the people.
I think that's where the real magic happens.
You're absolutely right. Best Start isn't just some case study in effective program design.
Right.
It's a story about human connection.
It's about those moments when people from all different walks of life with all kinds of experiences come together and say, we might not see eye to eye on everything,
Right.
but we have this common goal and we're going to make it happen.
It's beautiful. And I think it's one of the most valuable lessons we can learn from Best Start. That recognition that lasting change is rooted in relationships and those connections you build when you're working together towards something you really care about.
And it's not just about being efficient or productive, right? It's about something much deeper.
Exactly. It's about building that trust.
Right.
Fostering a sense of belonging, creating a space where everyone feels valued.
And respected.
Exactly. And that's not something you can just, force with rules and protocols.
It's got to come from a more human-centered approach.
Right.
Where people are encouraged to be themselves
Share their ideas.
and to really feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves.
That's where the magic happens. And I think Best Start gives us some great insights into how to create that kind of environment.
Okay, so what can we learn from Best Start about building those strong, authentic relationships within a partnership?
Well, I think it starts with recognizing that everyone involved is a human being,
Yeah.
right? They have their own needs and motivations.
So it's about seeing each other, not just as partners or colleagues, but as people.
Exactly. And that means creating a space where people can share their perspectives openly, where they feel comfortable speaking their minds, even if it's a different opinion.
So fostering open communication,
Right.
where disagreements are seen as opportunities,
To learn and grow.
not as threats.
Exactly. And it's also about celebrating the wins together,
Right.
acknowledging each person's contribution,
Yeah.
creating that sense of shared ownership over the partnership's success.
Because when people feel like they're really a part of something, when they feel valued and appreciated, they're more likely to be invested in its success.
Absolutely. And that investment, that shared purpose, is what makes partnerships resilient.
That's what helps them through the tough times.
Exactly. Because let's face it, no partnership is going to be smooth sailing all the time.
Right. There's going to be bumps in the road, frustrations, maybe even some conflict.
Of course.
Yeah.
But strong relationships, those built on trust and mutual respect, they can help partnerships weather those storms.
It's like having a safety net,
Exactly.
knowing that even when things get tough, you've got people there to support you.
People who are committed to working through those challenges together.
And I think that's something Best Start really understood, right?
Hmm.
They weren't just focused on checking boxes and achieving outcomes. They were investing in those relationships
The human connection.
that would sustain the partnership over the long term.
That's what made their success possible.
But building these relationships takes time and effort and intention, right?
Absolutely. It doesn't just happen magically because you have a common goal.
So what are some things we can do to be more proactive about building these connections?
Well, making time for informal socializing.
Like just grabbing coffee or having lunch together.
Exactly. Or
Yeah.
maybe organizing some team building activities.
Encourage open communication.
Right. Creating a safe space for people to share their thoughts and feelings.
Really listening to each other.
And celebrating those successes together.
Yeah, acknowledging everyone's hard work.
Absolutely. And, offering opportunities for professional development and growth.
Help each other learn and grow.
Exactly. And maybe most importantly, checking in with each other regularly.
Not just about work stuff.
Right. But about how everyone's doing, what challenges they're facing.
And how the partnership can support them.
Exactly. It's all about being human.
Yeah, it's an ongoing process.
It is, but it's so worth it because those strong relationships create this foundation of trust and resilience that can help partnerships achieve truly amazing things.
And it brings us right back to that core message of this deep dive, the incredible power of partnerships to create positive change in the world.
Best Start is just one example, but it's a powerful reminder that when people come together, collaborate, anything is possible.
It's been such an insightful conversation. We've covered so much ground, from those 9 building blocks to the incredible story of Best Start, and even touched on these big questions about sustainability, equity, and funding lasting change.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
And I hope our conversation has inspired you, given you some ideas, and maybe even empowered you to take action.
Because remember, the future is not something that just happens to us, it's something we create. So let's get out there, connect with each other, work together, and build the change we want to see in the world.
Until next time, keep diving deep.